The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Welcome to McGee Uncensored Podcast, and I'm your host, McGee. If you're tuning in, it's going to be a pretty good episode to listen to. I'm going to talk about my journey to the Pete. And by the Pete, I mean Peterson Event Center. The other night I went down and watched the WPIAL Class A championship game between the Monessen Greyhounds and Imani Christian Saints. Little side note, I do the public address announcing for the Greyhounds, both boys and girls teams, as well as football. And I wanted to go down there and watch the team win the title in person, which they did. Saw the group effort. Before I get sidetracked, I don't know why the WPIAL doesn't host or doesn't use CalU as the championship site. Instead of using 3 days, they could probably use 2 days to get all the games in. But I digress. That's a separate episode. Now going in the rounds with the favorite. There's no doubt about that. Other teams that were looked at as possible competitions, Vincentian, who were upset in the semifinals by Imani Christian. Vincentian had blown a big lead, apparently. I tuned into MSA Sports for the final minutes of that game, and Imani Christian went on I believe it was a 28-8 run at the end there. So, I don't know how that happens. But it happens. You know, you never know what goes on in playoff basketball. Especially if teams are somewhat evenly matched. And there's really no competition in Class A as far as the WPIAL goes. There isn't. There's only 3 sections. So that's why Monessen likes to play up a lot. And they hold their own. So I didn't expect much competition from Imani Christian. They had won 3 games last season, improved to 15 this year, with an additional of a player. I'm not going to give these names of these kids because it's irrelevant for the most part. And high schoolers really don't need to be in the limelight. Apparently the guy that I don't know, one thing about Catholic schools or Christian schools or whatever, they recruit, no matter what anybody says, they recruit, which I think is just downright wrong. I don't think that they value education as much as they do about winning sports championships that, you know, let's face it, are kind of meaningless in the big picture of everything. It's great and special for the kids, but overall, in years down the line, you know, it's kind of meaningless. And I have a whole other thing about, you know, people who played high school sports and peaked on that. And how small towns still talk about championship teams from 40 years ago. It's pretty sad. Anyway, I digress. Again, I saw nothing from Imani Christian that they even should have been in that championship game. They ran no offense. They had 27 turnovers in the first half. The player that was touted as being, you know, the number 1 scorer ended up fouling out, ran his mouth a lot, didn't do much. Coaches didn't seem to do much. I think they knew that they were outmatched and hoped that they could just hang. And they did for a few minutes. I think that's putting it nicely. But I saw no offense being ran by Imani Christian at all. It was like whoever got the ball shot it. And they had 27 turnovers in the first half. And if you would read the Post-Gazette's article, the coach was quoted at the end saying, you know, I thought the game could have been called both ways. And, well, how is 27 turnovers the fault of the referees? It's the fault of your basketball players playing terrible. Couldn't hold the Greyhounds jocks. Probably going to get crushed in the States. They played Juniata Valley, does Imani Christian. I don't know who Monessen plays yet. But I wasn't impressed. by this team that won 3 games a year ago, and they've never had really a winning program as far as I can remember. Never anything of prominence. I mean, for both teams, it was kind of a sloppy game. A lot of fouls both ways. A lot of fouls both ways. But Monessen pulled ahead, and they have no post presence. I'll say that. And that's just being observational, it's being the truth. They have nobody in the post that they could go to, so they live and die by the 3 or the jump shots, and a lot of guys don't have jump shots. They could penetrate, which is nice, but they're not drawing the fouls. That's going to hurt them. That's what they need to do better. Job at. It's just a critique. It's not a criticism. And the Hounds lose a lot of talent after this year. They lose 2 1,000-point scorers. Their bench has to get better. But they still could contend for the WPIAL title next year. Because like I said, there's very little competition in Class A for the next year. It was 74-59. And Amani Christian was some players I think I saw crying at the NY, crying at your terrible effort that you put into the game. Well, not being harsh, but if they thought that they actually stood a chance, they thought wrong. Last year the Hounds had their heart broken in overtime against North Catholic, who now plays in AAA and beat Lincoln Park for the title. And at the last game of the regular season, they lost to North Catholic this season in double overtime. So they take teams to their limit, and that's the thing about the Greyhounds is they're not afraid to schedule up. They're not going to be like a local team who schedules nothing but weak non-section opponents just to puff up their record. Competition helps you in the end, makes you better. But it was nice to see a victory. Nice to see a decent crowd turnout from Monessen, and best wishes to them in the States. I think that they can make a nice little run. I was looking at the brackets. I don't know who plays who exactly, but I was matching some things up, and they have a chance to at least get to, at least to the semis of their bracket. But we'll have to wait and see. They play next week, March 10th. Opponent unknown yet, because there's still championship games being played as I speak around the state to determine the rankings in the PIAA playoffs. As a former competitor, and I love playing sports, and basketball is one of my favorite. To see the lack of competition just around the board, especially in the Class A, and probably even Double A. I talk to friends and say we'd have a field day. Now, I had my health issues, and that's not without standing, but I probably would have been a 1,000-point scorer. A majority of us would have been a 1,000-point scorer. Probably went undefeated. It's embarrassing to see the teams that these schools decide to put out on the court. And as an announcer, it's boring to call blowout games. It really is. It's not interesting at all. And I don't know, I have a love-hate thing with the mercy rule. I don't know how well it is. But, yeah, just a lack of competition. Anyway, hope that they could make a nice run in the States, see what happens. They may be getting rings again, I don't know. That'd be nice to add to my collection. Nice little achievement. Nice little conversation piece. So that's cool. So just want to talk about me going down to watch that game. This was McGee with McGee Uncensored Podcast. Like my page on Facebook, McGee Uncensored. Follow me on Twitter, McGee Uncensored. Check out my Instagram, McGee Uncensored. Till next time.